My brothers and sisters in Christ, today's gospel is one of those passages that can seem a bit obscure and unfortunately is complicated by what, in my opinion, is, and that of many scholars, is not a great translation as we hear it translated into English in the New American Bible. We get this episode of the questioning of Jesus, although I should say the questioning of Peter on behalf of Jesus about the paying of the temple tax. So they're at Peter's house in Capernaum, where Jesus used as a base of operations. And so they come asking about the collection. In a sense, they come looking for the right tithe, we might say, from Jesus. This was a subject of some controversy amongst Jews at the time. This was a practice that the Pharisees had been involved in instituting in the time after the exile for the upkeep of the temple, this annual temple tax that Jewish adults had to pay. It was disagreed by other adherents of Judaism as to whether this was an obligation or not. But nonetheless, the opponents would come and look to see, will Jesus pay the temple tax? So, recognizing that Peter, it's his house, and he kind of represents the disciples, they come asking him. Peter says, yes, he'll pay it, goes in, and it gives Jesus an opportunity, as so often is the case, to offer a little lesson. What follows is a comparison that Jesus makes between a king levying taxes, and our translation says the difference between his subjects and foreigners. And this is where his point can be a little bit obscured for us. A better translation would be to ask, does a king tax his subjects or others, or does he tax his children, the royal family? Even better way to say, when a king looks for revenue, does he tax his own children, his own household, or does he go out to the subjects to look for money? This is a point he's making about his identity as the Son of God, that the Father doesn't levy a tax on his own Son. This point, of course, is a bit obscure. Our translation obscures it more, but I think I offer all this as a way of clarifying a little bit. But lost in this passage is also another important point about forbearance. Jesus uses it to teach and kind of make a little bit of a lesson that it's kind of silly for him to pay the temple tax as the Son of God. But he does so anyways. And of course goes out, tells them they don't have money because, as we've often seen, Jesus' disciples don't carry money around. And so he goes and finds the fish that provides the coin that'll pay the temple tax for both of them. So the practical matter is settled. But what's interesting is that even though Jesus says he shouldn't have to pay the temple tax, he does anyways. He says to avoid giving offense to the authorities. As we know, there's plenty of other times Jesus doesn't mind giving offense to the authorities. But in this case, what is being asked of him is not immoral, and it's not a point worth confrontation over from those who wouldn't understand anyways. And it's this that is something worth our thought today. How often are we willing to forbear something even though it's perhaps not rightfully imposed on us? So often things may seem unfair or unjust, and we may rail back against them. At times that may be right to stand up for ourselves. But there is also spiritual growth that can happen at times with perspective, a forbearance of that which is unfair or unjust, because ultimately it doesn't kill us. And instead of causing conflict and division over that which in the end of the day is not a big deal, it is an opportunity to practice humility and forbearance. The Lord knows that we chose to avoid needless conflict, to move forward with something that no harm ultimately is done. There are a million opportunities a day for most of us to practice this. Think of all the petty faults, the things that give us offense, the things that we can use as an opportunity either to externally react to or even inwardly to hold grudges or stew about or be irritated. But if we can practice this simple task of forbearance as Jesus does, we can let things pass and focus our energy on that which truly matters. May God bless you all.